thrones, smoke, and stone. A long narrative on rulers, rituals, and the medicines that moved empire's power appears on maps as lines and names, but it is lived at night in rooms, tents, and baths, in the small rituals that repeat until they become habits. This narrative follows a thread that runs through many courts and capitals. The way rulers used plants, resins, fumes, and potions to soothe, sharpen, inspire, or silence themselves, and how those private remedies shaped public history. Along the way we'll meet monarchs who inhaled incense thick enough to be visible, emperors who kept laboratories of curious powders, queens who were medicated into silence, and a few non-royal actors whose deeds were shaped by the pressures of empire. A Germanic commander who turned Roman training against Rome, and an emperor who built a wall with the bones of his people. The aim is to be clear, comprehensive, and human, to show how medicine, ritual, bravo, and authority mixed in ways both practical and strange. 1. Medicine and authority in pre-modern courts. Before modern pharmacology and clinical trials, medicine and political power were intertwined. A royal court was a center of healing as much as rule. Physicians, apothecaries, and alchemists were advisors. Their treatments were political tools. The idea of balancing the humors provided medical language for decisions that were ultimately social. Palm a queen, and the court is manageable. Sharpen the king, and he will fight. The substances available were the plants and resins of the known and exotic worlds. Opium and poppy syrups, henbane and nightshade, blue lotus and mandrake, cannabis infusions, myrrh and frankincense, and a host of aromatic resins and herbal wines. These compounds were used for pain, sleep, ritual, and sometimes control. 2 features stand out. First, many of the compounds were polyvalent. They could soothe, but in other doses cause delirium. They could quiet agitation, but also induce visions. Second, the use of mind-altering substances was rarely simply recreational for rulers. It was embedded in ceremony, medicine, and strategy. A king who sat through hours of a dense liturgy was not merely pious. He might knowingly place himself where incense and resins produced altered states that encouraged prayer, calm, or openness to counsel. A queen receiving a sedative was not only treated, but sometimes silenced in service of dynastic stability. 2. Portraits from the haze. Kings and queens who lived inside their medicines. These vignettes are composite portraits built from recurrent themes across chronicles and court records. They are not strict biographies. They are attempts to describe how substances shaped behavior, judgment, and the cultural roles of monarchy. Queen Isabella of Castile. The cabinet and the cup. Isabella was a ruler of iron will, who carried a personal pharmacy like an extension of the throne. Political life was stress incarnate, threats, negotiations, and voyages to fund. When sleep failed or a council became intolerable, physicians reached for opium-based teas, mandrake potions, or henbane drafts. The life world of the queen included medicines that modern readers would call narcotic. To her contemporaries, they balanced humors. Those potions softened night and, in moments of private weariness, made her world smaller and more bearable. They also sometimes blurred judgment or delayed decisive action, a human cost most chronicles politely omit. Charles the Bad of Navarre, the potion gambler nicknamed for his unpredictable rule. Charles was also notorious for his dependence on alchemical mixtures. His court alchemists promised everything: courage, clarity, immunity, even immortality. Ingredients crossed continents: opium, hashish, exotic resins, and the results range from political bravado to theatrical paranoia. Charles's decisions, volatile as they were, reflected a ruler trusting esoteric chemistry as much as counsel. That trust made him dangerously impulsive and, sometimes, theatrically visionary. Frederick II, the scholar on incense Frederick II, collected scholars and substances with equal enthusiasm. In his court, resins and aromatic vapors were part of intellectual experiment. Frederick's interest in hashish preparations, resins used in surgical medicine, and other fumigants was framed as curiosity. Would these substances open new avenues of understanding? The answer was ambiguous. They fostered extended meditation and philosophical flights, and in those flights he wrote, reorganized, and sometimes absented himself from routine governance. A ruler split between administrative genius and experimental introspection. Empress Theodora and Byzantine incense. Culture Byzantium institutionalized aromatic ritual. Incense and resins were material culture, central to worship, ceremony, and court life. Theodora's world was saturated with blue lotus, opium gum, and imported burners. The haze made the emperor appear closer to numinous authority. Whether she consciously sought visions or simply lived where the air altered perception, the effect was the same: a sovereign who seemed divinely elevated, reinforcing Byzantine notions of sacred rulership. Philip the Fair. Front row at the altar, Philip's piety and near-daily attendance at Mass placed him repeatedly under the most potent liturgical incenses of the age: frankincense, myrrh, and resins that could provoke visionary states. He inhaled those fumes not as indulgence but as devotion. Yet the recourse to sacred smoke may have influenced decisions made in a trance-like composure, from papal confrontations to the dramatic suppression of the Templars. Ritual, politics, and altered states converged in the cathedral nave. Eleanor of Aquitaine, wine, art, and influence. Court culture in Aquitaine centered on wine, and Eleanor's court was a center of poetic and political life. The wines of her court were often fortified with herbs: wormwood for wanderlust of thought, poppy syrup for sleep, and other additives to stimulate poetic invention. These wines lubricated negotiations, loosened tongues at feasts, and contributed to a cultivated atmosphere in which troubadours and policy could thrive together. Richard the Lionheart, pain, medicine, and command. Wounds were the occupational hazard of a crusading king. In Richard's case, opium and poppy-based syrups were the practical medicine of the field. They controlled pain and kept him functional during lengthy campaigns. The opiates blurred edges but preserved leadership capability. A general medicated into calm, capable of issuing orders mid-siege. These treatments are a reminder that the line between medical necessity and altered state is often thin. Joan of Castile. Medicated into marginality, Joanna's tragedy is the most explicit demonstration of medicine as political instrument. Presented in histories as mad, she was subjected to a regimen of sedatives, opium syrups, cannabis bombs, henbane, and nightshade microdoses, administered by a court whose political survival often depended on her cooperation or silence. Whether she was mentally ill or simply drugged into passivity, the result was the same: a queen sidelined by medicines prescribed ostensibly for her benefit. Henry IV of England, the king who couldn't sleep. Insomnia becomes a political problem when it affects judgment. Henry IV's chronic sleeplessness was met by the most aggressive medieval soporifics: poppy milk, mandrake wine, henbane draughts. These substances provided episodic rest, but sometimes at the cost of being incapacitated during crucial councils. The trade-off between a functioning ruler and the side effects of powerful sedatives. Catherine de Valde and fumigation chambers. Fumigation chambers, rooms intentionally filled with herbal smoke, were a fashionable therapy among elites. They promised purification and emotional relief. In practice, they produced thick, often intoxicating atmospheres that could dissolve anxiety and fortify romantic or political aims. Catherine's court used such chambers as ritual and therapy, and the ceremonial secrecy of those spaces became part of courtly power. Other courts and substances. Across medieval courts, there were common practices: blue lotus bathing in Byzantium, aromatic resins in palaces, vision wines among Iberian scholars, and hashish preparations crossing from Islamic medical practice to European laboratories. The line between ritual, medicine, and social performance blurred. Altered states could be a sign of divine favor, a medical necessity, intellectual experiment, or a tool for social control. 3. Ritual, spectacle, and the politics of perception. Two functions recur in this history: spectacle and management. Spectacle. A ruler surrounded by incense or bathing in lotus steam presented a specific image: sanctity, composure, or rarefied wisdom. Ambassadors and subjects who encountered these sights often interpreted them as signs of divine sanction or uncommon insight. The sensory environment of the throne room, smell, light, and sound, became political theater. Management. Medications could regulate a ruler's temperament. An anxious queen could be sedated into tractability. A belligerent prince could be calmed. This is not inherently nefarious. Pain relief and remedies for insomnia had practical benefits. But where medical treatment crossed into enforced dependence, when regimens were prescribed to keep someone politically manageable, medicine became governance. Two cautions are necessary. First, the surviving records are uneven. Chroniclers were often partisan, and silence can mean many things. Second, the presence of drug use does not reduce formidable rulers to mere puppets of fumes. Many governed effectively, even while using these substances. The story is complex. Medicines could empower and disable, enlighten and dull, in shifting balance. 4. When soldiers and walls decide history, Arminius and Qin Shi Huang, our story of rulers and altered perception folds into broader questions about how states secure and lose power. Two narratives from different eras. Arminius' ambush of Roman legions and Qin Shi Huang's wall projects show how leadership, environment, and coercion determined the fate of polities. Arminius, the Roman-raised warrior who broke Rome's back. Arminius was a product of Roman imperial policy. Taken to Rome as a youth, educated in its ways, and raised as a trusted officer. Yet his Roman training became a tool for Germanic resistance. Understanding Roman logistics and formations, Arminius planned an ambush in dense forest where discipline and open-field tactics counted for little. At the Teutoburg ambush, the legions, encumbered by wagons and supply trains, were vulnerable. The Germans exploited terrain, weather, and Roman assumptions. The destruction of 3 legions was not only military, it was symbolic. It confirmed Rome's limits and reshaped imperial priorities. Arminius's story is a lesson in how intimate knowledge and local advantage can defeat superior organization. Qin Shi Huang, monumental order, forced labor, and lasting walls. The first emperor who unified China pursued permanence, legal standardization, infrastructure, monumental tombs, and walls. The early Great Wall was both symbol and instrument, a line meant to mark civilization and ward off mobile northern raiders. Its construction depended on coerced labor. Convicts, conscripted peasants, and prisoners built the ramparts under brutal conditions. The wall stones are therefore as much a record of administrative reach as of engineering. From the emperor's perspective, it was a rational policy to secure borders and assert authority. From the human perspective, it was a project that taxed bodies and lives for the sake of centralized control. Both Arminius' ambush and Qin's wall show that empire is not only about ceremony and altered states, but also about material conditions, terrain, logistics, and labor. A palace can be perfumed, a battlefield is noisy. A throne is raised on ceremony, but that throne as rule can be undone by a commander who knows how armies move or by citizens exhausted by forced works. 5. Long shadows. Consequences of courtly medicine and spectacle, what ripples outward from scented palaces and medicated queens. A few consequences matter for history. Decision-making under influence. When rulers take potent substances to sleep, to relieve pain, or as part of ritual, the quality of political decision-making sometimes changes. The consequences can be minor, an odd treaty clause, or major, war declared in a fit of intoxicated bravado, legitimacy through ritual. Incense in altered states can reinforce sanctity. In religiously framed societies, being touched by visions or calm in the presence of sacred smoke could bolster claims to divine right. Social control and marginalization. Medicine can be protective or coercive. Systematically medicating an inconvenient heir or queen can neutralize opposition under the guise of care. The story of Joanna is an extreme example, a political system using medicine to exclude a claimant. Cross-cultural exchange and knowledge. Many of the substances used by European courts, resins, hashish, lotus, were known in the Islamic world or Egypt. Scholars and physicians exchanged recipes and ideas across religious and political boundaries. The circulation of medicinal knowledge was itself a form of cultural globalism before the modern period. 6. A human ending. Rulers, remedies, and ordinary effects. It is easy to joke about a king floating above his throne, or to imagine a queen who makes treaty decisions mid-hallucination. But the human reality is more grounded. Chronic pain, political stress, the daily grind of ruling a realm that could implode at any moment. These are real burdens. Medicinal opiates eased pain. Incense-shaped ritual focus. Vision wines sometimes encouraged philosophical exploration. Where those tools were abused, people suffered. Where they were thoughtfully used, they enabled rulers to continue governing. History keeps both sides, the pragmatic and the tragic. These substances were part of the toolkit that helped rulers perform authority and manage lives. They softened the edges of power, but sometimes blurred its boundaries. They were medicine and ritual, spectacle and strategy. 7. Closing reflection power rests on appetite and discipline, on the visible and the invisible. A throne's grandeur depends on ceremony, but the person who sits on it lives in a body that gets tired, wounded, frightened, and old. The story of medieval royals and their intoxicants is ultimately the story of how human beings sustain rule, by rituals that persuade, by medicines that heal or sedate, by spectacles that awe, and by the mundane calculation of what keeps a state functioning. Across continents and centuries, from incense-filled Byzantine halls to opium-laced military tents, from the forced ambush that humbled Rome to the forced labor that built Chen's ramparts, rulers and their remedies made decisions personal and political, the same way, and left marks that outlived them. The smell of resin, the taste of vision wine, the sound of chanting in a smoke-hung chapel. These were not mere curiosities. They were part of the machinery of empire,